Welcome back to the Orgasmic Birth podcast. Today, I want to take a moment to talk about something I'm incredibly passionate about: doula workshops. I always say doula skills are life skills, and I truly wish everyone had access to doula knowledge as early as high school. So, whether you're considering becoming a doula as a new career, want to better support your friends and family, or even if you're a husband or partner, yes, we've had dads and partners join our workshops to become the best birth support possible. This is for you. If you're in nursing, midwifery, medical school, or a practitioner, I have to tell you, I've been teaching at universities for over 20 years, and the students consistently tell me that taking the doula workshop was a pivotal moment in their studies, deeply enhancing their practice. And if you're planning a pregnancy, or maybe you're pregnant now, this workshop will transform the way you think about and prepare for birth. So, no matter what your reason, there are many ways a doula workshop can enrich your life. If you're ready to join me and gain skills that will empower you in birth and beyond, I have both in-person and virtual options. Check the links in our show notes. So let's dive in, because today I have a very special guest to talk about her empowered induction. When you think about induction of labor, what comes to mind? For many, it's a long, hard labor, maybe even a loss of a dream of labor starting on its own, or the start of a cascade of interventions. There's so much to learn about induction, to navigate it in a way that feels safe and empowering. And I'm so happy my guest today will share about her empowered induction and offer you tips and insights to consider in how, no matter what birth asks of you, you can be informed and empowered. Hi, I'm Deborah Pascali Bonaro, founder and director of Orgasmic Birth and host of the Orgasmic Birth podcast. And today, Tessa Cato is a birth doula, an orgasmic birth practitioner, and an artist. And I can't wait for her to tell you about her artwork, because she's passionate about supporting women in this important rite of passage in a very domesticated society. Tessa enjoys that birth is one of the last wild things we can lean into. Alongside her work as a doula, Tessa creates artwork around motherhood and has a variety of art offerings to help both new mothers and young children possess and understand the inner workings through creativity. So, welcome, Tessa. It is such a pleasure to have you join me today.
Oh, hi, Deborah. Thanks so much for having me today, and it's nice to see you.
And we get such an opportunity to be together. So, our listeners know through many things, our Orgasmic Birth Practitioner program, coming to your art classes. So, when you were willing to come and share a little bit about your own personal journey with birth and how that's inspired you to do all you're doing, I was kind of doing a happy dance. So, can you start us back to when you were pregnant, and what was that like, and what was your birth like?
Absolutely. So starting in pregnancy, I absolutely loved being pregnant. Um, I really had never felt such a sense of calm and trust in my body. I think for me in particular, knowing that it wasn't just myself and having this little seedling of life, and being able to nurture that really gave me this extra strength to ground down, be in the present moment. I can be naturally an anxious person. So it was such a beautiful experience to have those 9 months and really feel like, wow, I'm really doing this. I'm growing this human, feeling that connection so early on. So I absolutely loved pregnancy and, started reading all the books, read Ina May, and was just super interested in it. Um, I ended up hiring a doula. I was very curious. I didn't know much about pregnancy or birth, but I love being a student. So when there's something I'm interested in, I go pretty deep into it. And I was asking different people about doulas, interviewed a few doulas. I didn't even remember this until I was talking to my partner afterwards, but I think I had thrown out a home birth. And really, I hadn't many people in my family given birth yet. I was the first granddaughter to give birth. None of my friends were really having babies. So it just lit up such a spark in my life. We ended up going with a hospital birth. I was on insurance at the time that covered the birth. So it was kind of like, okay, here's your provider. Like, a nurse would come and check up on me, which was really great. And I'd always say to her, "Oh, I'm so curious about doulas. What's this doula thing?" And she'd kind of laugh at me. And then guess creeping up a little bit closer to the actual labor and delivery of my daughter, this practice, I think, let you go to about 41 weeks. And I was still pregnant. I love being pregnant, but there is that sweet spot right at the end when you're like, okay, every day, which kind of mimics doula work on a side note, because you're like, when is this happening? Every day waking up thinking it's going to be the day, and it's not the day. And the providers had started talking about induction. And I remember feeling very disappointed. I had plans to have a natural birth. It was my goal to labor without any drugs or intervention. And I just felt so connected to this. I don't know really where it came from. My mom, I was a VBAC, so that's a fun piece of information. But yeah, I just felt really connected to this dream. And when they mentioned induction, I was super not happy about it. I even, which was very out of character, I remember calling the provider and be like, I had a family emergency. I can't come in this day. I need a different day. And they were like, okay, to get it pushed back later. And which kind of speaks on a broader level, I think, of how pregnancy and birth kind of helped with the unshedding of all these different conditionings that I had collected over my lifetime. So it was kind of like the good girl, that was like a crack for the good girl to come out a little bit, come off a little bit. So I was able to kind of collect myself. I had, good support who was telling me, just trust the process. My doula ended up being COVID, so she wasn't with me, but shout out Nancy Freeman. She did a lot of emotional support beforehand. I remember going for a walk and, she was just listening to my underworld of leading up to this induction. And I ended up going in on a Sunday night and something kind of shifted. I was like, okay, we're doing this. I put my power buns in. We went to Dunkin' Donuts and got a dozen donuts to the nurses. I walked in my platform croc and I was like, okay, hello, I'm Tessa. Where do I go for this thing? And I remember them offering me morphine as soon as I walked in. I was like, this is bizarre, but okay. No, I'm good. Thank you. Also, no shame. Do whatever you want to do. But there were certain things that I started being like, feel strange. And they gave me the Cervidil, which is a cervix softener overnight. I had my hospital bag packed. I had my little art affirmation cards. I set up the tea lights. It was kind of, looking back on it, doulaing myself, and very supportive partner who was a great doula in many regards as well. So then the next morning around 7 a.m., the shifts were changing and they were going to come in to check me to figure out the next steps. And I remember, you barely sleep when you're in the hospital and you're on Cervidil. And I remember being like, oh, these cramps, like, whoa, because at that point you're still so in your mental space that you even have the capacity to be like, So I remember setting the alarm for 6:30, going into the bathroom, sneaking a snack, still kind of in my head, like, I know what I want and I would like to get this. So when they came in and checked me, I was 1 centimeter dilated And I had texted my doula, like, what do I do? And it's kind of funny because I didn't know much. I had a little bit of knowledge about labor and things like this going in, but I think in retrospect, like if somebody was 1 centimeter dilated, I wouldn't necessarily suggest, oh, just break your water. But I had the option at that point to go Pitocin or have your water broke. So I was like, okay, the doctor came and I was like, can you just break my water? And they're like, sure. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm bypassing Pitocin. And they broke my water. And then things really started to pick up. I honestly think I got lucky. And I remember the nurses were very supportive. They knew that I wanted to try and have a natural childbirth. I started, they brought me a rocking chair. And this is where things started to get, a bit more fun. Up until that space, there had been, a core sense of knowing what I desired, but there was also a lot of anxiety and a lot of emotions. And it kind of, as the labor started to pick up and getting more active, I was able to really go into my labor land. And I loved that space. Honestly, I was doing deep breaths. I was, just following my body's natural intuition of different breathing patterns I wanted to do. I was like envisioning different loved ones in my life, chanting with me. And it was all very intuitive. I didn't even try. It was just happening and kind of there along for the ride. And labor was about, I think it was about maybe 8 to 10 hours of that. The intensity increased. But the whole time too, I was so worried that, not worried, but I did not want to give in. Oh, actually, around 3 centimeters, I was like, I wasn't in that labor land yet. And I thought maybe I do want an epidural. So it took me the people coming in and sharing what it would be like and just feeling so like, I don't know, I just didn't align, and to be able to give that, a sacred no. So yeah, things really picked up. The nurse was very supportive of doing different positions. They had me in a peanut ball from like 8 centimeters to fully dilated back and forth on either side. And it was beautiful. It was very intense and it was very beautiful. And then I was able to deliver, our baby. And that's the story.
Oh, so beautiful. And I love how you really leaned into your wisdom, though, too, to trust the process and then say, break my water. It's like you knew, right, that for you, that was a really amazing moment. And I also love how, you considered the epidural and understood, I feel like how beautiful that you got the information of what that would look like. And again, felt into at that moment that that was a no. You could keep going. So, such a beautiful story because, as I said in our intro, not all inductions, people can go through it in a way that they feel empowered in choices. And even during the pandemic, my heart kind of hurt that your doula couldn't be there too, but that she was able to have prepared you so well and kind of be there in a virtual sense, right?
Yeah. And I mean, for me too, I'm a doula, so I'm not trying to say don't have a doula. Like I really believe in the power of doulas, but I think for my personality too, I was so grateful to have that support beforehand and the childbirth education aspect. And then when it came to actually being in the room, I'm under stress. I'm the type of person that's going to look at somebody and be like, what do I do if it's a stress for myself? So almost not having a doula was also a good decision for me for that birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, can I ask you, because that was a powerful birth and you made powerful choices to have that birth be so empowering. What were some of the lessons learned for you, and how has that kind of changed you and brought you to do what you do? Like, were you a doula prior to this, or did you become a doula after?
Yeah, I became a doula about a year after because that same nurse I had been talking to, um, there was a scholarship program going on to have people become doulas. So I applied through that. Um, yeah, and I think the biggest lesson was probably self-trust, and it just connected to myself to that part of confidence, which I really hadn't known beforehand, like that core confidence. So, you know, for a long time too, I was on such a high from that birth. It was like, oh, I can get that, I did that, I can get through anything. Really felt that strong.
Yeah. So powerful. And so now, as a doula, you've been practicing as a doula, and now you're bringing your art to your practice. Can you talk a little bit? Because we mentioned your art up front, and like, I just feel, for everyone, I came to Tessa's class not knowing what to expect, and just like was so moved seeing how you're taking this was a class for, people that had just given birth, right? And partners, and to just express. Can you talk about some of your art for
Yeah,
preparation and
absolutely.
parenting?
So the name of my doula practice is actually Birth Art and Beyond. And in addition to doula support, I have a lot of different offerings for women throughout pregnancy. I love to teach birth affirmation classes. I do paper mache belly casts. I do placenta prints and channeled artwork. So there's kind of a whole array there. And then additionally, even before pregnancy, I was teaching art classes, and I got involved in a thing called Maternal Journal, which was very nurturing throughout my pregnancy and in those early days of motherhood. And then, kind of around the time I started my doula work, I also started teaching kids art classes. So this started with the idea to kind of be able to bring my daughter to work with me if I wanted, which uh, yeah, which was an experience. And kind of through this all, I created this class called Baby Art Class, which is designed for babies from 0 to 8 months old and their primary care provider or mother. We have dads come sometimes, we have grandmothers here. And I really structure this class to be supportive of moms in this pivotal time in their life. So we always make something that is going to have a way for mom and baby to remember this time in their life. So we do a lot of like baby handprints or footprints. And then there's also kind of a journaling aspect where they have some time to kind of look within and sort through what's going on. We share. And yeah, it's been really, really special. I'm actually teaching our first baby art training in November to teach people how to do this, whether you're an artist who likes to work with mother and children, maybe a stay-at-home mom who feels a calling for this, who would like to kind of start to integrate that into their life, or a birth doula. It can be really nice working together, the baby art and birth doula services, because so many of the moms that you support during labor, you're able to kind of see them again and be on another art journey with them and their babies.
So beautiful and powerful. And, for people that aren't used to thinking about how art might enhance your process, like for those people that are pregnant today, what do you feel is the difference in people taking the time to expand with art?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for me, I'm the type of person that just needs to express on any level and all levels in order to function. I think art making can be a really great way to bring people together in community. It can kind of help you connect to that inner child within you. We all have memories, I'm sure, of making art when we're little, but this is something that oftentimes gets lost when we're older because things like perfectionism or lack of time. So carving out that space to get in touch with maybe that childlike play again. And a lot of times you can make art and not even really know what you're making or where you're at. And then you'll look back on that art a week later, a year later. And it's, for myself, I always find it so telling and representative of what I was going through in that moment.
So beautiful. I love it too. I think that you're offering such an opportunity for people to expand because even being pregnant or giving birth, right? There's so many emotions flowing. And I know you're a doula too. So bringing kind of the two aspects, the doula and the art together, what would be some tips that you might have for people that are listening today that might be considering a pregnancy or are pregnant, to help them on that journey?
Yeah, one thing that I love to tell people to do if they are feeling called to is birth affirmation cards. Just even carving out that time to connect with yourself and think about maybe different phrases that might help you during pregnancy or labor. I also like to always stress that it doesn't necessarily have to be super positive. I've heard the affirmation like I can't do this and kind of a response from partner, you're already doing this. I've seen that be a really powerful one. Um, and just taking that little bit of extra time and little bit of extra care to set that intention and make something for yourself that you're able to then bring with you, I think is a really lovely first step. And you can always reach out to me. I'm always kind of brewing up new ideas and creations.
Thank you. And for those people that are postpartum, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Postpartum, I always say, right, our highest highs, our lowest lows in the same hour, the same day. As a doula and through your art, what are some of your tips for them as they're leaning into that time?
Find a baby art class and go to it. Yeah, I think the same thing. It's art making and self-care. It's not really something that we have been taught in mainstream. So, I think especially postpartum, everything is so overwhelming and everything can be so much because you're getting used to this new lifestyle. So art making and community, that's really where I feel like um, there's so much importance and so much room for growth because you then carve out that time with other women who are going through very similar things as you. And it doesn't have to be so serious. You can kind of just unwind. If there's a day that you don't feel like even going into your underworld and exploring, you're still gonna, leave with a cute memory of a baby footprint. So I'd say seek community, seek art making in community.
Yeah, fantastic. And my last question I have to touch on, you're a big part of our orgasmic birth practitioner community. And I know we've been really enjoying looking at, challenges, healing, expansion, pleasure, and all the different aspects that sometimes don't get talked about in the birth world. Do you want to share anything? How are you integrating that pleasure into your practice and how you're supporting clients?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. I think as a doula specifically, like the work kind of always starts within. So, kind of following the seeds of curiosity, having taken your trainings. I just got back from the Orgasmic Doula Advanced Retreat in Ocean Grove. So kind of taking that wisdom, reading different books that I heard people mention and kind of bringing that own wisdom into my own life, I think naturally it kind of ripples out. And remind, like even today, my point of sharing this story is there can be great joy in pregnancy. There can be, your birth story can be really fun and it can be exciting. It's absolutely intense, but there's so much pleasure in it as well. So that's something I think doesn't always get mentioned enough.
Yeah, I agree. And I thank you so much for sharing that. Is there any other tip you want to share with people today, that are on their own journey with pregnancy, birth, or early postpartum?
I think my biggest tip would just be self-trust and reaching out for the support that you need along the way.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tessa. And I know for everybody listening, they want to know how to find you. And I know that both you can, if you can share the region that you do in-person support, but I know they can reach you virtually as well. Can you talk a little bit more about your services and where to contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my birth doula services, you can be found on my website at www.birthartandbeyond.com. We also have the baby art training there and different art offerings for moms. Also do like watercolor commissions, stuff like that. And then my Instagram is at tessa.cato. I'm now serving Westchester County and settling my roots here, so kind of understanding geographically. But if I seem within the realm, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And was there one more question?
That was really it. Virtually,
Yeah,
right? People can contact you and do some online with you.
absolutely. And if you're one of the special Jersey moms, I'm always willing to travel a bit, so you can always reach out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your empowering birth story and how that's rippled out in the many ways that you're offering your support and care and inspiration to so many. It was truly a pleasure.
Oh, you too, Deborah. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to everyone who joined us today. We always love to hear from you. Please send us your comments. If you want to connect with Tessa, look in those show notes. We've put all the links in there for you. And we thank you for joining us and hope you'll join us on the next episode of the Orgasmic Birth Podcast.